What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another Overwatch League news video, and today we're actually having our first Season 4 update video of the year, as I know I'm a little bit late to this, but John Spector, the Vice President of the Overwatch League, did make a guest appearance on their YouTube channel a bit earlier today talking about some of the things we can expect about Season 4. He announced a lot of interesting and cool stuff, and if you have not checked out the video already and you wish to, maybe after watching this one, make sure to check out the link in the description because I will have the video there if you want to watch it. But there's a lot of stuff that he talked about that I wanted to go over and just give my opinions on, and the first of which is the fact that he announced that Overwatch League Season 4 will be starting in the spring of 2021. Now, he did not list off a specific date or month just yet, but it could probably be assumed that it's going to happen in April because that's what all the rumors have been stating. It could also, I guess, be a little bit before, maybe like the end of March or the beginning of May, but April seems like the most realistic time if you ask me. I know that fans are going to be really bummed about that because that just means more off time before we get back into the action, but it's completely necessary in my opinion, and I'm glad they're taking a bit more time off, to be completely honest with you. Last season was a complete logistical nightmare. They didn't really have a plan going into it. Everything was so sudden because of the pandemic, but now that they know what they're facing, they have time to actually plan this out and make sure that everybody is good to go. They've been in constant talks with all 20 teams, making sure that everybody is good to go and everybody's going to be where they need to be and that there's not going to be any issues that present themselves. I think it's really great that they're taking their time with this. I know it's really sad for us and we're all suffering because we just want to watch some games, but this is a very necessary step in making sure that this season is even better than the last one. Speaking of last year, it was also announced that regular season tournaments will be making a return in 2021, and they're going to be using a similar format to how they were in 2020, but they're going to try and look into ways to possibly optimize it, like with different bracket formats, for example, and just mess around with some of the other general competitive structures they could look at. Whether we were in an online environment still or we had homestands, I think that having these tournaments either way is a fantastic thing because they brought about some of the most exciting moments of Season 3 without a doubt. Generally speaking, I think the public really does love these types of events because they're super exciting and they're really high stakes, you know? These teams really try because there's bragging rights on the line, there's money, and free bonus wins. As a result, we get more unique storylines, and I think the regular season just becomes a more emotional place in general, which is always good for any sort of sports league, and not to mention that we get more interesting games that get you excited. We get a bunch of close games that just really, you see two amazing teams go all out, like with Philly versus Paris, for example, or Shanghai versus Seoul, stuff like that. Some of the best games from Season 3 came from those tournaments. In fact, some of the best games we've gotten in the history of this league came from those tournaments, so I think it's just a win-win all around. I'm curious to see how they adapt, change, and make these tournaments better potentially. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. John Spector said that it is the league's goal this season to build around these types of big tournaments without having to go through those awkward and sudden transitions like we did this year thanks to the pandemic. He also announced that regional play will likely be making a return and that it's going to be similar to what we saw in 2020. Again, given the state of the world right now, this makes a lot of sense and this is probably the right move to make because your players are your #1 priority. Without them, you don't have a league, so you have to make sure that they're in a good mental state, and I think the best way to do that is to make sure they're happy with where they are and to make sure that everybody is safe. It's my hope, though, that they make it a bit more balanced this time, not necessarily which teams are going there, but just making sure that it isn't so lopsided. Instead of having 7 teams or whatever it was in APAC, you can maybe have like 10 in each. You have 10 in APAC, then 10 in NA. I think that makes a lot more sense, but I'm not really sure how that's going to go thanks to the logistical issues. With that in mind, I'm really hoping the league is considering getting another casting duo in there, preferably one who does the APAC games alongside Wolf and Achilles. That way you don't have to worry about the NA caster stressing out and staying up really late like we saw with Hex that one time. It's not just the players, coaches, and teams we need to be looking out for. Everybody within the org that works for the Overwatch League should be happy, so I think it's very important to make sure we take that step. I'm hoping we get more information very soon about what this regional split is going to look like in 2021, but as of right now, John Spector said the league is still in talks with every team about the exact setup of these regions, and we are going to get some new information as we get closer to the 2021 season. Next up is the end of season playoffs. So while it isn't really said outright by John Spector, he kind of implies that we might be going back to a similar system that we had in season 2, do where only the top teams qualify for the playoffs. With there being no sudden interruptions and teams needing to play catch-up, everybody should have a set schedule that allows for every team to play the minimum game requirement by the end of the season. While I did really enjoy the Season 3 playoffs, I think this is the right move to make because, as I've said multiple times here on the channel before, it really wasn't all that fair to the teams who were supposed to qualify for the playoffs to begin with. It was really sucky because teams that actually played well throughout the entire season and earned their wins were in a situation where they might end up losing to a team that shouldn't have been there to begin with. I feel like it made the regular season a bit more meaningless because the only thing that you really got out of having a better record than everybody else was picking your opponents in a couple of rounds. Like, that's it. It creates this narrative that everybody's a winner, and that's just not true. I don't agree with that. Like, take the Washington Justice, for example. I enjoyed their playoff run just as much as anybody else out there. It was incredible to watch, but at the same time, they really did not deserve to be there because they were terrible during the regular season. I mean, so awful. They won like 4 games. And now you're telling me they get to play in the losers finals against a team like Philly who won 20 games? Like, that just doesn't seem right to me. Now, if we do end up going with the same playoff format, it's really not the end of the world. I'm not going to cry about it or complain all that much because I did enjoy the Season 3 playoffs a lot. But I really would prefer if they try and, restore the competitive integrity of the game and what the playoffs are supposed to be in a sport. Jon Spector also made it very clear that they want to have one global champion just like this year and the years before that. So that probably means that we're going to see a bunch of teams travel to the same place for like the Final Four or the playoffs again, you'd have to imagine, because we're definitely going to still be doing an online format for the foreseeable future. But who knows? Maybe by then the pandemic will be a bit more under control and we can maybe have all of the teams play in an arena, kind of like what we saw with that Runaway versus Lunatic High show match. Even if there's not really any fans, I think that would still be a really cool thing to do. Another big time announcement that came out from this little video from Jon Spector is that the league is planning to compensate for the longer time off with some off-season events and tournaments and stuff like that. Unfortunately, not a lot of big details were revealed about said tournaments and events, but I'm sure they're going to involve a multitude of Overwatch League teams. Maybe we could even see some like regional showdowns or rivalries, kind of like with the California Cup or with some Chinese teams like we saw last year. And maybe we could even see some potential matchups between the best teams and contenders and some Overwatch League teams. That would be a fun way to scout out new talent that's upcoming. And I'm sure there's going to be some other creative options out there, like with custom games and maybe some pickup games where we see teams of random players in the league playing against each other. I'm sure we'll get more details on what this is going to be all about very soon, but for now I ask you all to be patient. The last thing we have to talk about is the fact that the league is planning a BlizzCon event called Shock versus the World, where the San Francisco Shock are going to play against dream teams of pro players, community figures, and even more in a series of different challenges. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they mean by a series of different challenges. That could mean all sorts of different things, maybe like a normal best to 3, or it could just be like custom games. I'm not sure what the deal is, but I think this could be pretty fun to watch. I'm really unsure of how competitive or serious something like this would be, but could you imagine if like a team of 6 superstars from the Overwatch League all go up against the Shock to see if they can take them down? That would be so sick. It'd be like an ultimate all-star game of sorts. Or what about like a streamer team? I know it probably wouldn't be all that fun to watch like competitively, but I'm sure the fans of said streamers would get a real kick out of it. I know February kind of feels like a long way off still, but it's really only a couple of months away. It'll be here before you know it. So with that said, we should all start to get excited about this. Mark it on your calendars and keep it on your radar. Even if it's not that fun, it's better than having absolutely nothing during the off season, you know? It helps pass the time and keep us entertained. And I applaud the Overwatch League for making an effort to plan these types of events because they could give us nothing at all, so it shows that they really do care about us. And with that being said, that's going to conclude this Overwatch League news video. So if you enjoyed it, it would mean a lot to me if you could give this video a thumbs up, and if you would subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, if you want to stay up to date with all things Overwatch League news related, and make sure to let me know what you're thinking of all of this news down in the comment section. What do you like? What do you dislike? Let me know. You can also keep up with me on Twitter at ATP Overwatch, join my Discord server through the link in the description, and become a channel member by hitting that join button if you wish to further support me. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate your support a ton, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.